Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't see in my mind it going this way as far as like something I would share. But people, you were asking me before the show, like what made you want to do this, and part of it, even for adults, is like everywhere you look on social media, it is content that it just blows up your attention span. There's a lot of, I think, I wouldn't necessarily just say like blindly negative content as much as like morally gray content.
Right.
And I think part of doing stuff like this is like, well, let's just have genuine conversations and share knowledge. And you're touching on that with how important it is for adolescents, especially when they're in that very first kind of prepubescent place, and it's this is right and this is wrong, and then they come across something on social media and there's some person with no experience saying this is right. That can be dangerous.
Right. And it's such an influential time. And so, you're hearing all of this other stuff, and, kind of depending on, I guess, how influential that person is.
Yeah.
It's very easy to kind of grab a hold of that information and really take that as truth, where it might very well not be. And,
Right.
It can kind of be kind of dangerous.
Yeah. Do you see that happen a lot these days where, I'm sure the answer is clearly yes, but like, it's like a wave where this person just so happens to be super influential online, and then all the little boys are talking this way and all the little girls are talking this way. And then the one I hear a lot is like, oh, I'm alpha. I hear that from like a lot of young dudes. I'm like, what does that even mean, bro? Yeah.
I know. I need to get better at the lingo.
Yeah.
Out of touch with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely kind of waves of kind of what's in, what's kind of popular.
Yeah. How do you, since you work and have worked a lot with both, how are you helping families like navigate or maybe even mitigate some of those kind of situations that can go sideways? Are you an advocate for kids not being on social media, or like that age range not being, like having smartphones and things like that? Or do you have an opinion on those things?
Personally, I would delay it as long as you possibly can. I realize that that's not very realistic.
Right.
But I think the longer that you can wait for your child to be on social media and have that type of presence, the better.
Yeah.
There's just so much negative influence. There's a lot of comparing yourself to what you're seeing on there, which just leads to, for a lot of teens, feeling inadequate, feeling not good enough about themselves. And they're already struggling with identity and figuring out who they are and what they're into, comparing themselves to their peers, and just adding all of that social media pressure. I think can really have a negative impact on their mental health.
Yeah. And I think, the research over the next decades is going to show this more and more, because there's this conversation I was having with another male clinician, because we'll get a lot of young men that are coming in, and they are terrified to approach anything like relationships, dating, anything sexual. And it plays into the part you were mentioning of like, then we transition into that mid-teenage years, and they're being inundated with like, real dangerous pieces of content. And I think it's affecting young men in that way, where they're like not even approaching women anymore. I don't know what the direct link will end up panning out to be, but I think that's certainly a factor. Like in their teen years, especially like starting maybe 10 years ago, it started to get really risque on the social media side of things.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you're kind of starting to see that trend with the young men.
Yeah, like young 20s. Yeah, and it's, there's humor to it, but it's a real issue, because like I'll remind them like, hey, they're just human beings. Or like it's also like, because I have a few individuals, who are also, they're young men interested in men, and it's like they're terrified of each other. It's like they're just human beings.
Right. Do you think that some of that plays into the young people live so much of their life on their phone, like they're in their phone? That's where their sort of world exists.
Yeah.
They communicate with their friends, they don't even text, they just like Snapchat each other.
I know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't
these
get
days.
that, but whatever. Versus kind of going, like picking up the phone and having a conversation on the phone or interacting in person.
Yeah.
There's just not, I think, as much of that as there certainly was when I was a teenager.
Yeah, and cell phones started to become a thing like when I was well into middle school, which probably gives away kind of the phase of life I'm in my age and that kind of stuff. But I do think that that's a huge factor, because it's like, is it a developmental thing, or is it that it's just so much disconnected now? And we've talked a lot about that. Like even sometimes we'll have conversations with the producers and they'll chime in on it, where it's like everything is inundated. Like it's all social media all the time.
Yeah.